and welcome back for another episode of the Blackwatch Profiles. I'm your host, Thorn Rain. With me, as always, my co-host, Mr. Kyle Wynn. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's getting weird because the whole format for everything is so much different. I'm like refreshing Twitter, seeing what's happening there, and there's like
Mm-hmm.
some drama with people can stream, other people can't stream. It's just a weird day, man.
Yes. But joining us for this profiles, none other than the fabulous Mr. Boopasaurusrex. How are you doing this evening?
Oh man, now that you've called me fabulous, I feel like I have no choice but to be.
I
You
mean,
know, I'm
you,
no
you
longer just former Overwatch Path to Pro Contenders caster for North America, Boopasaurus
No, yeah.
Rex,
nope, nope.
Christopher Boopasaurus Rex Lassard. I'm also fabulous.
Get
So
the full name in there, yeah. Get the
Yeah.
yeah,
whole plug.
exactly. That's gonna go on my CV, right? Just like if the whole thing, there's gonna be like 19 quotation marks, and
Mother of Dragons,
it
Breaker of
will say
Chains.
that I'm a tier one caster in Valorant,
Mm,
just like everyone else.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. Before we get so deep into it, because it's the talk of the town, it just
Hmm.
reminds me. Remember during E3 when the new Elder Scrolls got announced and it was just a title screen,
Yeah.
right? Like that's kind of how
Yeah.
I feel about this, right? Everyone's just like, "Well, yeah," and it's some like idea.
Yeah.
So
Project A is gonna be the next big game. That's my next game I'm playing. It's like, bro, we know a name.
Though something that's really cool about it though is we live in a world where you can prep that far to potentially try to make it to
Yep.
esports, and that's cool.
Mm.
But it's still like just like out of context when you think about it. It can tickle your fancy, I think.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of former Overwatch pros playing a lot of CS lately, and so I'm like, oh, I know what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yep.
I
Get
I
see it.
that early prep work.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of like you don't want Overwatch to turn into Major League Lacrosse. Right, where you can
I
make
mean,
like
what
an
is
okay
that?
living. It's a thing. Actually, we have in Denver a very popular team apparently called the Mammoths, and the only reason why I know that is because I was casting a Hearthstone tournament back then, and they kicked us out for the lacrosse game, and I was
Interesting.
like,
That's
for a lacrosse game,
Do we
interesting,
have a team
and
here?
they let us see, and it was awesome. Like
There's
that
six
was,
teams.
yeah, it was awesome. I had a blast at this lacrosse game. But anyway, like I don't want Overwatch to turn into lacrosse, but I think Valorant is feeling like the new NFL, right? It's not the
Mm.
XFL, it's the NFL, and people are just trying to go for it. Just like kids who start playing football when they're 4 years old, we're going to start
yep.
seeing that stuff in gaming. And the biggest difference is that these kids are going to have to specialize in genres as opposed to like a
Mm.
single sport, and that's just something to think about, I guess. But let's continue.
Yeah, I mean, we saw. I guess we're wrapping this around the path to pro. We saw a bunch of people who have dropped out. Move on to Apex, and that was like the game for a while. And then most people are like, you know what? Apex kind of sucks competitively. There's a lot of RNG, there's a lot of camping, there's a lot of just like it's not like that was the only other thing to play other than Overwatch until now. And now that there's kind of an avenue that's like, okay, it's a little bit more what I'm used to. I know a little bit better. All of those former Overwatch pros that we saw in Apex, I feel like they're going to be like, okay, good. This game sucks. Let's move on to another game.
Yep.
They'll continue to be middling over there and move on to the next game and be middling over there. And that's their career path, is to be like pro, but only just barely in every single game.
It
Um,
don't all esports have that though? I have made the joke before that thank goodness that Overwatch esports exists, or else Apex esports wouldn't. Uh,
yeah,
because of all the
literally.
people who ended up switching over. But in the end, I think the biggest challenge when it comes to making any of this successful, right, is how you create and understand the pipeline on how to not do this from the top down. And I think that is, and I'm sure we'll get into this, right? But as I kind of like refocus into Overwatch for myself, right? Um, I think Overwatch is very top down in management, right? They think about everything up front, and then they think about everything else, right? Everything
Mhm.
is reactionary past Overwatch. Like, and even parts of Overwatch League feel reactionary, right? And so that's where I feel like the change really needs to come in terms of just most branding, right? I think people are so worried about looking good and representing a certain lifestyle brand. And I've heard that, esports is all about branding. We all know that sponsorships make up over 60%. That might be a made up number, but I think it's more than half of
It's a
all revenue
good chunk, yeah.
sports, right? And so I think people are just so worried about that, they forget that they have to build it on something, right? And I think so many things in the past have been built on faulty foundations that once they got too big or too big for their britches, the cracks really started to show. And then it's kind of like that image of, you're at the dam and you put in one finger and then another elite comes in and you put in
Yep.
another finger. Eventually you're going to run out of fingers. And that is my that is my biggest concern when it comes to a lot of things, right? Any startup, anything that grows quickly, right, will have those challenges, but it's all about if you're going to be proactive or reactive to them, and you can't be proactive to all of them,
Right.
but you gotta stay ahead of the wave, right?
Yeah, so I guess I think that maybe the reason that why we're here is a little unknown to maybe some people. So maybe we should kind of preface this kind of big discussion with like why we're here right now, and like you're at an interesting point where you may or may not kind of be leaving the game, correct? And so you're kind
Yeah.
of in this now. Like now you can kind of speak pretty candidly about like your experience and your true thoughts on the game, being someone who like lived and breathed this game for like at least 2 years, right?
I
Every
was one of the first,
casting.
man,
Yeah.
right? Like I was casting some of the first Overwatch tournaments out there with Left Guy
I was gonna say
way
you
back
were
in
on the
the day.
table on the desk with
Yeah,
Left
yeah.
Guy.
Overwatch
Yeah,
Contenders
for season
0.
0, I was there
Mhm.
for Overwatch Carbon series, like, I was cast in FaZe Clan when Raucus was there, and Cloud9 when Adam was the support, right? And I think Rolf was still there playing Zenyatta, and, the I think that's the biggest piece of weight for me, is this is the first game that I ever felt a part of a community on, if
Mm.
that makes sense,
Mhm.
and that I ever really explored what my life could look like in this industry in. As I grew in the industry as a professional, what I realized was I kind of wasted those first couple opportunities, and I still kind of feel like that way this time, right? It's kind of like that I always could have done more. And so for those at home, I was a North American Contenders caster for 3 seasons, so over a year and a half, and I loved it. That's what I want to preface it by. It was the most amazing experience of my life, and I would not give it up for anything. Especially since I got to go through it with what I call my work husband, Evie.
Mhm.
Hashtag cap and pry. That's why it's work husband. But and I got to share it with someone that I cherish deeply. And that was the best part of it all, was all of the troubles, all of the successes, every performance, every single time I went through something, I had someone to go through it with, and she had someone to go through it with too. And you don't get those kinds of bonding moments with people outside of like your significant others, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that was, bar none, the greatest experience of it all. However, there are there are definitely some things that I've wanted to say for a very, very long time, that I have had to keep to myself because of who I was working for, right? I
Right.
used to be a teacher. I totally understand what like representing a brand looks like. And, I'm not going to be throwing shit around and burning bridges here either,
Yeah.
but I think I have some legitimate feedback to to how this process works, both for me as a caster and you guys as an audience and those people who are playing. That would, I think, really, really help the overall scene.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but it's it's a very weighted and nuanced issue as to why tier 2 has been struggling so far, right? But it's also hard for me to not take things a little personally,
Right.
to like start things off and get a little emotional because I did it for 3 seasons, right? Not once did I ever get an announcement, right? My picture was never
Mm.
in anything that Contenders was in.
Yeah.
And and I see the current announcement go up, and that makes me feel bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, what did I do? What did I do wrong? And that's where I think most of this falls, is I don't think I received information more than 3 times total about my casting over the 3 seasons. from anyone from Blizzard. We got zero feedback whatsoever. So if I didn't know I was on the chopping block. I was never
Right.
told of things that I could improve upon to change this thing that happened to me, right? And that's what really pisses me off is I take feedback really, really well. I think, right? I can get a little
Mhm.
sensitive. Sometimes I can get angry, but I always sleep on it, and I'll always
Right.
try the other person's feedback just so I can, take the opportunity to prove them wrong if they are wrong.
Yep.
Right. So like, and I try it out anyway, but I was never given any feedback other than slow down. Right. The only feedback that I have, like the only true feedback I ever got was on the internet. Right. And
Mhm.
so one of my biggest regrets was then I started listening to everyone else other than myself in this point in time. I tried to be a caster that the hardcore fans would love. I tried to be a caster that casual fans would love. I tried to be a caster that my bosses would love and my husband would love. Right. And I tried all of these different things. I lost what casting was for me. And I don't think there was an environment that could have been provided for me that could have changed that. There was absolutely zero support outside of just some words of wisdom from anyone at Blizzard through Ham and I's first 3 seasons. I can say that people enjoyed working with us and people really enjoyed interacting with us as I did them. But if you expected, and I hope this is different for the casters that are getting there now, and it feels like it is just a little different going forward. So I'm really excited for them. But for me, like I was never paired with a more experienced caster, which is what I heard what they were trying to
Mhm.
do for this one. I don't know if you've noticed, but someone is paired with, a new caster is paired with an experienced caster. Lemon is the new, Leg is the experienced. Trid and Ham are a little
Right.
different, but basically they're like, we want people to get mentors, right? So
Mhm.
why didn't I get one during
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
3 seasons? Why didn't I get to try for this season? Right, like now that everything is different, and that's what really pisses me off. I didn't get a thank you, and this is just unprofessional in my opinion. I heard about them not getting me for the next season through Ham,
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's
and
poop. Like,
I
yeah.
not
It's just not.
once got any contact through someone at Blizzard as to why I was let go until I said something. I messaged someone at Blizzard and I was like, "Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was the time of my life, blah blah blah." And all they gave me back was, "We just decided to go with other people." That's it.
Hmm.
And
A
so
year and a half you dedicated to working for them, and even before
yep.
that, you did what, another year and a half almost of,
Yeah, well, I mean,
broadcast
not that's
TV.
it in terms of that was the only email part of the email. It was like
Right. But
he was
that
like,
was your.
thank you for your thing, but like I did this for 3 seasons. I had to be I get to be the only caster that had to cast at home for 2 seasons, right? These
Mhm.
guys get
Yeah.
studios. I can't help but be a little jealous. I put everything I had. I spent so much of my own money into making our part of the broadcast good. Right. And that's what really pisses me off. I see, ZP and Avast with their setup, and it's it's different every time, right? And then you have me, and I'm actually, I feel like putting my work ethic into this and trying to make this better for them, and they never really thanked me for that. Right. And like to put things into perspective and how reactionary everything was, like call time wasn't until 15 minutes before um, Contenders was on. Right. So if
Mm.
there were
Okay.
sometimes there would be sound issues through entire maps and series. We were using Discord because their free trial on VMix ran out. Right. Like
What?
those are all things that happened that I had to deal with, but I couldn't say anything and I just had to take it. And this is the thing that like is really, really frustrating is we as casters are representatives of that game. So when things go
Right.
wrong, right, they're gonna blame us. So I am forever gonna be associated with that first decline of Contenders, right? Because Ham and I got there, then we started going at home, and then the quality of play got worse, right? And then now I'm gone. No thank you, no talent announcement ever. When I got hired, I didn't actually know I was hired because they actually told my salary to Ham and asked if it was okay if I was paid that through Ham.
Well, that,
And
that's the most backwards thing I've ever heard.
yeah, like he could have contacted me, he could have done any of it, but no, he straight up said, "Hey, do you think he'd do it for this amount of money?" To not someone who wasn't me. So Ham knew exactly how much I was making through that first season of Contenders, which it wasn't the same, right? So like I don't care that Ham knows, right? I would just like to be the one to tell her those things,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
she was getting paid more than me anyway, so like, why did it matter if she knew?
Wow.
So
Right? So like that's what I dealt with. And that's what I feel like went up there just like a beauty queen and put a smile on my face and tried my best every single week, which I don't think I can say about everyone. Players, other casters included, right? And I'm not trying to like point out ZP and Avast because I think admittedly throughout a couple of the games um there were some momentum shifts. There's some just awful games there for, for some of those games in contenders. And I totally get it. It's hard to give 100% every single time, right? But I tried my best. I really, really did. And in my life, I was told that if you did these things, if you were good to work with, right? I never complained. I was never a princess, right? I was never mean to anyone. And I still got dropped.
I think at
Right?
a
And
certain
I don't
point,
know why.
yeah.
And that's like what makes me mad. Tell me I'm not what you're looking for. Tell me my voice is annoying. Tell me like something else. Like give me something. But we just wanted to go with other people. It was a hard decision. It's such like
It's a cop out.
it hurts. It hurts me. Right? Like that I worked for you for this long, over a year and a half, and this is all I have for it. Because during that time, right, there's some interpersonal things going on with us, me and Ham, with some of the other talent at the time, the grander talent, including Overwatch League talent. And we were getting advice from, every which direction. And when we would receive feedback, it was always like, don't be yourselves. Right. I was told by a current member, two current members well, I wasn't told. They actually said this behind my back. But two current members of the Overwatch League talent roster said my voice was too gay to be a professional caster, right? So like those are the people that I was also around at the time, right? People who I
That's
felt didn't think that I should be there, right? And they made it clear that that's what they thought about us. It wasn't like that the whole time, and it's totally cool. You don't have to be mentors, you don't have to be
Right.
like nice, but you're also our coworkers, right? So let me give you an
yeah.
example. So when Ham and I didn't get World Cup, right?
Yep.
Which was something that I expected. We got some new talent for World Cup, right? Lemon, very good friend of mine, 100% deserved, right? So nothing's, and this is like another shitty thing about it, right? Like in the casting world, we're friends with our competitors, right? So it's like
Yeah.
hard to be like completely happy, but Lemon and Herix 100% deserve everything, particularly Lemon because she's been spearheading so much for tier two,
Right.
right? But as we kind of like go back to the other thing, um, people weren't actively supporting us. And when the World Cup came up and I saw that all of the other people taking part of World Cup were like, oh, these new casters are great. Oh, like support these guys. Oh, this was such a great joke, right? Ham and I not once got any of that, right? And maybe that's because you thought we were shitty, right? But I don't think that's what that was, right? And that's like the kind of thing that continues to piss me off through this entire process. As you can tell, I'm like the most animated at this point, right? Is those are, I love the Overwatch League talent. I got to spend so much time with them during season 0, and I'm only talking about one or two of them. But man, it really sucked to just like not feel any support whatsoever from people that you considered like above you in your system, right? And I was like afraid to, and when we did reach out, when we did get VOD reviews, right? Like I said, it was always like you got to take voice lessons, or you have to like change you, right? You guys are too silly.
Hmm.
You guys are too something. And then finally, after this last season of Contenders, Ham and I looked at each other. We were like, "Fuck it." Right? We're gonna just do our thing. Right? We're gonna go ahead and cast like Ham and Boop because people forget this, but people loved us on our first week,
Right.
right? Like the hate kind of came during the second season, but the very first time we got out there was a wonderful success. Right? I said the wrong team name. I was nervous, but whatever. Right? It was adorable. I'm adorable. But like the but man, I'm kind of lost in my head here because there's just so much I want to say, and like so many things that happened that I kind of accepted because of the position that I was in terms of if I don't go along with this or I need to keep my mouth shut, or else I am sabotaging my own career. right?
That
That's
was
not
that was
stuff
one thing
that
I was gonna bring up is that like you're kind of in this position that I've seen a lot of other people. You got in the game industry and the acting industry get this like don't complain or else you'll jeopardize your spot and
Yep.
someone else will want to take your spot. And so you then are forced to not bring up even like genuine true
yeah, there
wrongdoings because you're
was
like, well, if I complain, even if it's justified, they'll just give my spot to someone who won't complain instead
yeah,
of fixing the source of the issue.
exactly. There was and this part of it, I always try to look at both sides, right? Because there's definitely a part of me that's like, I could have been a lot more forceful in this, right? That I could have said things, but I felt so bottom of the totem pole when I was there, right? Because remember, the producer for my first season didn't even talk to me, right? Until I got there. I was so worried that when I got to Burbank Studios, that my name wouldn't be on the list because I never actually got told that I was hired, like word for word.
Mm.
I heard through Ham. So I heard that I got Contenders through Ham, and I heard that I didn't get Contenders through Ham. And that's just like the type of full circle, which means literally nothing changed throughout, throughout
Yeah.
any of that,
There's
right?
no progress made. There's
Well,
no like
and the hard part is I don't think it's their fault, right? I think they're working with pennies on the dollar because that's what they've got, right?
yeah.
They've been tasked with creating an amateur system, right? Calling it, Path to Pro, colloquially Tier 2, which I have a huge problem with and always have, but it's 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 part of the lexicon now,
Mhm.
right? But man, it's just there is so much that I think could have been done to set Ham and I up for success that was never done. Ham and I were. I always say that Ham and I are like the Firefly of Overwatch casting. Like we're the great experiment. We were something that hadn't been done before, right? We were a type of style that is still to this day something I have not seen, right? Whether that's because it's not good for broadcast or because Ham and I are just that awesome and unique. I'd like to think the latter. But we were never set up for success ever outside of that first week when we were like prepped and like, first week jitters, you're the most prepared and you go, go, go. And then all of a sudden we realized that like no one cared, right?
So
So
yeah, so can you tell us like a little bit about like so for the first season you were on, which would have been 2019
2018,
2018
2018
season
season
2.
3.
3, right. It was 3,
Yeah.
yeah. So you did 2018 season 3 and then 2019 1 and 2. That first season in 2018 that you were part of, that was in Burbank. I remember seeing like a
Yes.
tweet like here I'm in Burbank. But then for all of 2019, both the two you and Ham and then Avast and ZP were all separately casting from like ZP's house in Texas and then your place in Colorado. And so like you went from everyone being in the studio and it being kind of a much more in-house thing to now we're like, okay, we're almost outsourcing our casting essentially at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
and so like, and you would think that that would be hard in terms of working with your coworkers, but when your coworker straight up says that he doesn't want a VOD review and that giving me help is giving help to his competition, so he needs to be cagey about it, which like I totally understand. That's not something I would ever think of, right? But I think that's a legitimate thought process in an industry like this, definitely to
mm,
protect yourself and where you are in the ladder, which is a lesson I now have.
Yeah, it
Right?
seems very cutthroat.
Like a year and a half later, I still won't do that, right? But I just kind of wanted to preface that with I see where that was coming from. I don't
mm,
think that's as douchey as that part is as douchey as it sounds. But at the same time, like Ham and I got VOD reviews. We got VOD reviews from Uber once, Doa once. But then right, it was just hard because we go home, we have themed outfits, right? We're
mhm.
putting as much effort as possible into this home broadcast, right? I don't know if you can tell, but like I've got like a whole studio down here. I have a second set with a couch. I've got like 4 microphones, right? I wanted it to be as good as possible. And unfortunately, I think because everything was just so last minute, right? Because I think almost I don't know about this, but my theory had always been that Contenders wasn't the only project that the team was working on. So I think Contenders was maybe like the second project for a lot of those
Mm.
people. And so we never really like
It
it
always
was
just
just
felt like an afterthought.
yeah, exactly. And you go and call it tier 2, right? Which is
Yeah.
like, hey guys, second best, right? We really should
Here's
have
our
stuck
B
with that
team.
Master Pro,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, like us being at home, I think, was the first part of we got to try to make this our own, which we did try to do. But I think what it really highlighted was the amateurishness of where Ham and I were at that time. I don't think I was necessarily ready for that first season. I don't think I was the best play-by-play caster available for that first season. I think I got really lucky that Ham was so wanted at that time, and I just happened to be her partner, right?
Mm.
However, through the second and third season, I feel like I really, really grow. And by that third season, and now I'm the best caster I've ever been, right? And I had to do a lot of that in terms of looking at my own work, setting up this studio, right? So I can complain about having to do it here, but it did force me to get all this awesome stuff and potentially help other people along the way by utilizing the resources that I did get. It just sucks that I put all this into it and didn't really get anything out of it outside of
So
the friendships and love along the way.
So one thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of a thing that I've wanted to discuss for a long time, and hasn't really had the platform, is this idea that like Path to Pro has to be definitively markedly worse than Overwatch League because that is their crown jewel, and they need to have like they can't advertise. That's why like when someone's like, oh, why don't they put contenders in the
Literally seen
main
tweets
menu
about
for
this.
Overwatch League, or why not tweet about it? Why not do this that like I and this is super kind of pessimistic, but like it feels like it just needs like they can't let it be too big. They can't let it be too they can't advertise it too much because then it will, you know, they have more of a reason to okay, maybe I won't watch Overwatch League because it's a crappy week. Instead, I'll watch this contenders match or whatever. Like there's this kind of vibe of like we have to make this definitively worse. We have to have the production be less. We have to have the level of, competition be less when we have heard that like even the top maybe like the bottom half Overwatch League teams were getting dunked on by a contenders team. Like those are the things that like you need to make Overwatch League seem like the pinnacle of the competitive experience, even
Yeah,
though half
and
these teams are crap.
it's so funny, right? Because this is another thing that kind of like makes me think about just how my surroundings affected it, or like just who I am affected how people perceive me. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but through our time, I've talked a lot about tier 2 and players. Right? In terms of who I said was going to be big in Overwatch League, almost every single player that I pointed out has made it in. Right? So like the three I think that like really come to mind is Gig, right? I remember like when he was on Chicken Contendies, get this guy coach, he's Overwatch League caliber, right? So
Right.
it's not like we were providing um less than ideal, analysis and commentary, right? It's just what I think I felt was important wasn't necessarily what the contenders audience wanted to know or what they felt was important. I had always said if you throw Ham and I up on Disney, right? Like we're perfect for it, right?
Mhm.
We're that diversity photo that's like in your gym that's like this, right? We're all holding on to some like olive branch or something. I don't know. But that was the joke that him and I used to say, like, put us up on Disney. We're perfect for it. But I think that was more so because we were still trying to find our spot in this world, right? We don't have anyone who is exactly like us in terms of who we are and who we are as a brand that we can necessarily model ourselves after. And I think that was another challenge for some people was I think you had to say, I like this or I don't like this. I don't think there are that many people who were in the middle about us. And I think that contributed to some of that like passionate um discussion about about our casting pair. And the reason why I like bring it up after your question is just like all of it kind of comes together, right? When the staff is working on potentially other projects and this is tier 2 for them, right? And the players are all leading, the players are trying to put everything they have into it, but then when lobbies are late or when, all this other stuff, when it's very obvious that today's contenders has been last minute, right? They got into the office at 5, the sound problems still aren't there, right? They like it doesn't feel good if you're participating in that either, right? Imagine if you went to a tournament yourself in whatever game and only half the computers worked, right? Would that win feel as good?
Yeah.
Right? It had nothing to do with your play, but just because people cared more, right? And I do think people care. I think people care about Overwatch, the ecosystem. I think in big companies like Blizzard, marketing teams are more in charge of this stuff than the actual development and project management people, focused people who are working directly with me and the team, right? The marketing people are the ones that have to get this thing out there. And the marketing people are obviously all Overwatch League right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and they have been for 3 seasons, and I think what they thought was Overwatch League was gonna be a resounding success and naturally make Contenders a thing people wanted to do, but in order for that to happen, you need to provide incentive, right? And they haven't provided incentive for anyone to actually walk this path to pro, because every time we get mad, they do this thing where it's like, "Oh, roll lock," or, "Oh, fancy new thing. Oh, Overwatch 2, we're gonna solve all our problems this time around," and it never does, right? And so and so frustration gets compounded, and then when you come to play, you're not even playing to win anymore, you're playing to not lose. And I think that's where a lot of teams ended up, by that, my last season was, you showed up for Contenders, you got spanked, you went home, right? There was
Yep.
the passion, and fire was definitely not apparent in a lot of those teams, and it ran the gambit. It wasn't just the bottom teams, because I probably saw more passion out of them, right? Which is like, I saw more passion out of like open division teams and early season like unsigned teams than I did in some of the other ones, because it didn't even matter if you were good on a Contenders team. So a lot of people got called up anyway, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
your performance in Contenders just didn't matter. Right? Because Lashro was always going to get called up. Alarm was always going to get called up. All those guys that were, oh, they're the best players in Contenders, right? It's easy because there are people like me and all these other people like you guys, Ham, ZPFS, saying, oh, these guys are good. And then all of these other people go up there and it's like, oh, we've known this the whole time, which is bullshit. So,
Yeah.
um, the yeah, so I'm trying not to be negative, but this is like the first time I've talked about this at length since it's happened. So I
We
apologize
are
if I
that
end up
outlet.
going
No,
like
hey.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's
every
literally the
which way.
point of
So
this is to kind of like, because like I guess we don't really have this opportunity a lot to like have someone be able to speak non like PR or overly PR about the whole thing about like, oh, there were some troubles, but we're working. Like, no, like this was the genuine like, no, dude, some
yeah,
things sucked. This
so
felt really crappy. This didn't work right.
here's another example, right? This is where like I just, when I hear something and I just roll my eyes, right? So when I was on season 0, they were talking about free cam. Oh, it's season 0. We're just going through growing pains. All right, Overwatch League season 1. Oh, it's season 1. We're just going through growing pains. Overwatch League season 2. Oh, no, no, no. We're just going through growing pains. We're just waiting for those home and aways. Home and aways start. Oh, no, we're just going through growing pains. Like, how long are you going to be going through growing pains? Like, you're literally saying this so you cannot be held accountable for decisions that might be bad, right? Because you've made some amazing decisions. I think Jaws has been great, right?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they weren't able to announce their own, right? Because someone in
Yeah.
marketing keeps leaking something, right? It's like, it is poorly managed from the top, in my opinion. So, can you imagine what it's like in Contenders, where I don't even think they're being held accountable for anything, right? If we can't use a better service like vMix because our free trial went out and for the rest of the season we can't see the 12th player's portrait, right? No one in the audience knows, but but we get hammered on, like all those times that Ham said there's a character that wasn't on the stage. That's why, right? Because we
Mhm.
couldn't see the 6th character at the time. And yeah, this and this, but like still, right? It's that setting up for success that never happened. And the other thing that I think Ham and I never really did was we never really tapped into like the negative being cool thing in this world, right? Because we could have been like, oh, we got no sound, sorry, right? And just like broke the magic of television,
No,
Right.
you
right?
guys played it. Like you guys made things like when
Yeah.
stuff broke, you guys had fun and drew away from the issues while chat was going off. Like that was one of the best things about you and Ham was when stuff broke, you guys had fun when the camera cut to you guys. It wasn't just oh well, here's a few stats, we're gonna wait, here's a timer. Like I listening or well, not listening to because it's Twitch chat, but watching Twitch chat is like one of the most toxic things I've ever seen. And the fact that, like you said, you had to get the majority of your feedback through that is like, that's terrible in of itself. And then your guys' personality just worked in those situations. You made it fun, and then you don't get anything out of it. It's a crappy situation.
And because that was always the rule with Ham and I, don't ever break the magic of television, right?
Mhm.
Like, because that's what we thought professional broadcasters did, right? We didn't know it was cool to be like, "Huh, we can't hear, let's just cast," because you know how many times Ham and I casted with no sound,
Mhm.
right? Or like how many times like we would do something and then we'd find out like the next day in a clip that ZP Navas like happened across the same thing, right? But they got the credit for it, right?
Right.
And like we're drawing the same conclusions, but they're weighted differently. I don't think this is true anymore, but I honestly think who we are, um, at least in the beginning, I still do kind of believe this. I do think that it did end up becoming a thing. Um, for example, like I actually didn't really see a lot of people complain about my voice. So haha, screw you, my voice isn't too gay. But and I can be a professional broadcaster. But the also on a tangent, that was like the most motivating thing in my life. Um, and you know how many times I've wanted to be like, thanks for the caster curse, brother. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do think that some of the best piece of feedback we got was actually from Monte Cristo. And this feedback was like so deep, it like ripped me to the core. And I think this kind of expounded on why people complained about us so much is what we did well, we both did well. What we did poorly, we both did poorly. So sometimes it turned into eating too much Halloween candy.
Ah,
And I think that is probably the most accurate piece of feedback that I've like ever
Hmm.
received on our
What
casting
could you
because
kind
I
of
like
elaborate on that a little bit more on like what that specifically meant?
so we're so different. Right? I don't sound like a lot of other casters. Ham is Ham. I mean, her
yep.
name is Ham Tornado, right? She talks about sphincters every chance she gets on a cast, right? The only person I know that'd go for it, and babies, and all this other stuff, right? And so when we get into like our little riffs, right, where we're kind of jokey, or we get into that like we're on the couch and talking to you type thing, right? There's just a point where for some people it becomes too much and it looks like we're not taking it seriously. And I
Hmm.
think that what people didn't understand was that we were doing a lot of that on purpose, right? Like everything that the two of us did was like an intentional choice. When we went for cringe, it's because we wanted to be cringy, right? When we missed gameplay things, of course that wasn't our choice. And throughout the seasons, we got better at that. But like in terms of like our jokes and our style, it was so funny because there's like an uptick again by the end of season 3 when people are like, oh, these guys are, they're not just like dumb, right? Like they're like we put into it, we like went for a brand and we went for it, right? And we leaned into it. And I think sometimes that can make your teeth hurt for some people. And just like I said before, we were so polarizing. You either loved it or you didn't. And even when you loved it, sometimes it was like you ate too much Halloween candy. And so we were getting good at what we were good at, and we weren't necessarily improving on what we needed to improve upon. And I think if we had accelerated our casting through that first season just a little bit more, I might not be having this conversation with you. But again, I don't know because they never told me. So
Yeah, like one thing I did notice too, and you brought it up kind of at the very beginning, is that like every caster duo. So like that's the one thing I've noticed about Overwatch. I think in comparison to other esports, is like they don't care about who you're paired with, and that was something I remember talking. I think that was to you like around the payload like a year and a half ago or something like that, about like how you kind of need to find your partner early and stick with them and kind of grow with them. But then literally every existing partner, every existing caster in the Overwatch League is not with their original person. Like Uber used to be with Mitch. No, Uber used to be with Jason Kaplan.
mhm.
And then ZP used to be with Hex, and then they put, brought Hex up by himself, and then they put in Mr. X by himself, and like they just continued to like bring up one half, and one half they broke up, Jaws and Leg Day and brought up one of them. And so there's just always this, you don't have that kind of partnership anymore. And so that's why, like, when I heard that you and Boop had gotten split up, and Boop was with, I think, Trid now, right?
Ham's with Trid.
Yeah, sorry, Ham was with Trid now. That's what I meant. But like that was kind of it. It's just like there's just no consistency with the casting. Like, even Lemon Kiwi and Hurix, who have been together for a long time, I think they got broken up now as well,
So
and they're each casting individually different.
if I had the same six people, I would put Leg and Ham together because they've casted together before, right? I would probably keep Hurix and Lemon together because they've casted with each other before, and put
Hmm.
Trid and Vicky together because Trid's got, he's the only one I think that's represented. I think Leg Day might be Code Red, but Vicky is like the pro. You got the two pros. You got Leg and Ham, who've casted China together back in the old days. You got Lemon and Hurix,
Hmm.
who've already developed all this, but none of that happened, right? And part
Yeah.
of me thinks that while Lemon and Leg, in my opinion, are owl ready, right? I think
Right.
Leg's already owl ready. He's been putting out content better than most people in Overwatch for a bit. He's just really been doing
Hmm.
a lot now. I think Lemon and Leg are owl ready, right? But I also think that Hurix is, and just no one knows, right? And that's another thing. Like he doesn't get to show himself off with the partner that he's known the longest, right? So he has to relearn some of those things.
Right.
So instead of only a couple of those people learning, all of them are. And I think that
Mhm.
just is like another magnification of how surface level a lot of that knowledge is, right? It's like, oh, I think this will be good,
Yeah,
right? But
and what that does too is what now you have is every single casting duo is going to be a new duo, and so people are going to complain like, "Oh my god, these casters suck." And like, well, they just have never like they have no experience. Like I remember trying like I tried to cast a game with Deathblow once. It was like a community like a game night, and we're just like casting for fun. I'm like, holy crap, just talking with someone new and trying to fill time with someone who you don't know their pacing is pretty freaking difficult to compared to someone who you've chatted with a
yeah,
bunch.
yeah.
And
And
so like
so
it just catches you off guard, so you're going to be not your best version of yourself. And so
Uh,
every single one of those casters is now not going to be showcasing their true potential and top ability anymore.
and I think this will become evident with these new pairs. Uh because they are going to go through growing pains. Ham and I are good, right? Like we also are good casters, right? What we find important in a game might be different than what some people find, but I will go to my grave and put my foot down and say we're good at what we do, right? I'm going to be unforgiving about that. And one of the biggest things I think that really hurt us has nothing to do with like us. I think it was the fact that ZP and Avast and me and Ham were so different. It was like watching a different show, right? It was like watching BoJack Horseman and then The Americans, right? Like like that's how I felt. And just like only like I can't watch The Americans sometimes because it gets too intense, right? And
Right.
I just don't get the jokes in BoJack Horseman sometimes, right? So like, but I think it was just so jarring, right? And it was the only comparison that Ham and I ever got in Contenders was with ZP and Avast, who is a professional caster and has been for the last 4 or 5 years, with a
Hmm.
former professional player, with someone who's just been casting for a year because I'd only been doing content before that,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
a caster, right? That's who we were paired up with every single week, right? And I think that what people are going to realize is how hard this is. Lemon and Leg are going to kill it, right? But even I think all of those people have to realize, everyone who's new, it's been, when that many people are watching every week, you got to start like bringing up the new stuff, right? Once you become repetitive in your second season, right, and you've said that joke for the third time, people start to notice, right? And that's actually something that we didn't really think of when we got there. But again, this is all stuff that I think that should have been part of that mentorship that I never really got, right? The only person that I've ever seen like me in this industry is Chris Puckett, because we kind of sound the same and we have the same name, but he's on like the hosting thing, and I know I'm a good host, right? And so
Hmm.
I just really want, and I wanted to do it with Ham. That was like the other big thing, because it's hard for me to say that Trid and Ham's product is going to be as good as Ham and I's, at least
Right.
for the first 3 or 4 games. They're both professionals and it's going to be a good product, but
Hmm.
Ham and I had something special, and it's obvious to me that that's not what they wanted, right? But it's all about, I couldn't become what they wanted. I couldn't move into that space. And that really all comes down to feedback, because what was I supposed to do? I don't know. That's kind of like where I start getting sad again. Is I feel like I could have changed a bunch of stuff and potentially ended up in the same spot because it feels like it was me that they didn't want, not like a particular skill.
Mm.
So I guess with that, it like what are you doing? Are you sticking with the game, or are you kind of done at this point? Are you saying, okay, well, let's do TFT, let's
'Cause-
do Runeterra, let's do Project A? Like, is this it for you, or do you have like? Because I mean, you would have to like start over and find a new casting partner, and you need to find a new outlet, a new method, because even Broadcast GG has lost their coverage rights, or whatever that contract was. Like that's gone now, and it's like the whole system has completely changed. So I guess what's your
Excuse me. I have a mute button. I could have used it. The big thing I think for me is I still love the game and I want it to be successful. There's definitely a part of me that like wants to be vindictive, like I think anyone in this situation, but I'm
Yeah.
also an adult because I don't think anything I said is necessarily like groundbreaking or super tea or gossip, right? Other than the
Yeah.
fact that they told my salary to my coworker, right? I think that's like the big
Yeah.
thing, but that's like an office, like bureaucrat. You know what I mean,
Yeah,
right?
that's it's not unheard of. It's not like a
Yeah,
very drama
and
thing.
there are just some things personally that I would have liked. Like I would have liked, thank you so much for your time, Chris, like on Twitter.
that little bit of respect, yeah.
Yeah, because I gave them that respect, right? But it kind of felt like they always felt like they were giving me a favor or doing a favor for them. Or no, like they were doing me a favor by just having that opportunity. And that never really went away. That's definitely, I think, more on me. Um, but yeah, I think with everything going on, this is my thought process, right? I love the game. I still have my show on UGC,
Yep.
Mhm.
Overwatch lately, and that's been super fun. Like, and I love hosting. I love asking questions. I love interviewing. As you guys know, I love to talk.
No, I would have never guessed.
That's why I'm a caster, or aspiring caster, I guess. Again, no, I'm a caster. And like this is the other thing for Ham. She was like, Chris, like if they asked you back, would you say yes? Right after everything that happened, right after the management and not ever really feeling like they set us up, not getting gauntlet, like we never got a chance to like be on a big stage, right? Which is fine because I would have picked ZP and Avast too, right? They were more well known, they had the followers, but I also like started Contenders with 41 followers. Now I have almost 1,000, and percent wise, I feel pretty good about that. But it never really stuck, and so I have to kind of evaluate, like you said, exactly what my role in this community is going to be from here on out, and things I never really got to talk about as a caster that I wish I did. One, being a representative of the LGBTQ uh, population, right? Like that's something I wish I could have felt. I don't know. I didn't want to like rub it in people's face,
Right, but like you
right? But like I
wanted at
wanted
a
to
certain point
speak on
to
the issue
yeah.
way more than I did. For example, like the pride thing that happened with Susie a little while back. Right, like I wanted to like speak on it, but then I was like, I don't want to wade into like political waters, even though it
Right.
was about me. Right, as
Right.
I viewed my identity as political. Right, like
Mhm.
that's something that I wish I never have to go through again, and that's something that I hope people realize is part of that like thing that people who are disadvantaged have to go through, is that you as a person are a detriment, right? And that I am making things political by being me, right? By mentioning a husband, right? And
Yeah.
me on this need to be professional, skirted by that so many times on Twitter. Like I was open about it. I posted pictures of John and like all
Mhm.
this other stuff. And like if you read my Twitter and you followed me, you could see like my pictures from my honeymoon.
Mhm.
And if you didn't think I was married to Ham, you knew I was married to a man, right? Which was always the funniest thing because I have a wedding ring. A lot of people thought Ham and I were married.
In the
Um,
beginning, I did. Yeah,
yep. See, that
I
would have been a
did.
great shtick. But I have roots in this community. But a lot of where my mind goes is what's next, right? Like what is smart for me. And like I said, I wish in terms of what's next, I like want it to be a like LGBTQ thing, right? I want to be unapologetically me this time because I said I was that before, but I
Mhm.
wasn't. right? I was lying to myself. I really wanted to be, but I didn't realize who that was until I casted that last land, and I was just like, "Whatever, I'm good at this." Right? And I'm a professional. I have and it's so funny because I viewed myself so low on the totem pole, right? But I have so much experience, not only as like a facilitator and a host and a caster, but I have a lot of work experience too. I've dealt with very large contracts. I've dealt with a lot of the business, sales, and marketing side of entertainment and sports. And so, how can I leverage that with my passion for Overwatch and esports too, right? So, I think it's kind of what's next is utilizing that like sales and marketing thing. And if worst comes to worst and I can't make it on camera, my passion's still going to be on camera. I want to cast, and I do want to cast Overwatch still. So if you're a semi-professional co-caster, color caster, let me know. Or if you're an amateur play-by-play caster, I'd love to try my hand at some color casting because I do love to talk. But yeah, so short answer, I don't know. Long answer is I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. There's I would love to cast with some people. I've reached out to some people in the past. I've always wanted to cast with a player. Just to kind of see
Oh,
what that
that'd be
was
good.
like, because that was like the most consistent complaint about Ham and I was our game knowledge. And so what do I do if I just kind of like take that stress away?
Right.
Right? Because if I cast with a player, then inherently I will get more knowledgeable as well. Um, I would love to try that out. And there's something exciting about taking a couple steps back and grinding again, because for the second time, I think I started resting on my laurels, like expecting to be a Contenders caster, and that just didn't happen.
Mm.
Right after Contenders season 0, I could have been the content guy for Overwatch, right? But I just didn't, because I was lazy. I was lazy as shit when I was 24. So I just didn't do anything, and then I found Ham, and then we did it again, and I wanted to make more content, but it was hard, especially in that second season, to remain passionate about everything Overwatch because
Mm.
of the feedback online and that question of what's next, right? Uh, if they were to ask me to come back to Contenders, I think I would want to say no just to like prove a point, but totally say yes anyway. Because I
Mm.
love casting Overwatch, right?
Yeah.
And I have complaints, but and the reason why I brought up that other stuff was I wanted to say, like, hey, I'm not like a 22-year-old kid right out of college who's never had a job before, right? I know these things are wrong. You're you're not like pulling the wool over my eyes, right? Because I've been the other person in this before, managing people, right? And I there were challenges, there were things that need to change in that tier 2 community in order for me to feel comfortable putting 100% into Overwatch again. So I'm no longer going to be putting 100% into Overwatch, maybe 50, maybe 30, because there's some really awesome stuff coming up for me on the TFT side of things. Um, but I'm kind of open, right? The most exciting part of this is the discussion that I've had with people of what if Overwatch just isn't the best game for me to cast,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of my style and who I am. And now I get to be free in discovering if that's true or not. Right. And I get to find that answer. And then that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, because I mean, like you mentioned, like you were very unabashedly yourself. Like that is one thing. Like you will always be you, and you want to be. And so, like, if if it didn't work out in Overwatch, that doesn't necessarily mean that like you are the problem. It's just a wrong situation possibly. And so, I am kind of curious to like what could work better. Like, what could be the situation? What could be the game that like matches more? Because I've seen certain people who like casted one game and you're just like, something feels a little bit weird, and they switch to another game. You're like, oh wow, this is way 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 better. Like I it always felt different. Like I felt like Monty and Doa worked slightly better for League of Legends because of the way that they had cast and stuff. And then when they came to Overwatch, I'm like, I had saw old footage of them in League. I'm like, oh, that much more fits like the way that they work. It always felt a little bit awkward in Overwatch. And it's not to say that either of them were bad casters, just they had been slightly better in League at like it matched the way that they chat, like because they had created this like kind of chill bantry, like filling time with kind of and it just they had to change who they were, and it felt a little bit awkward moving into Overwatch League. But now that they're kind of back and doing that, it's just like, oh, okay, like that. It feels like a better fit, I guess. But I don't know.
Maybe we all forget that Golden Boy casted Overwatch, right? In Contender
Mm-hmm.
Season 0 and was pitchforked away and then came back and is now the golden boy we know now, right? So like that's
Right.
always like that's something I would love to do, right? Like to be like the Slender Man of Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of like be there, right? Because I have like this like ability to like be there or like just happen to be around the person having an important conversation,
Mm.
right? And I'm terrible at keeping secrets, so I'm like the last person you want to be there. So it all kind of like works out. But like I would love to do that and come back and like I think at this point it would be awesome to host a homestand,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I would need to get up to that level, right, of the Katie Bedfords of the world. But Katie's a wonderful person and a good friend, and I know that she's going to be supportive in helping me along that process, along with a lot of other people that I now feel for some reason a little bit more comfortable in reaching out to. Because what I have to realize is, even though I'm not in Contenders, and that's a bummer, right? There are two things that really make me excited about this upcoming season. Number one is that Hirix and Lemon are casting it. And that makes me happy to no avail because I think Hirix has been slept on for like 2 years
Mm-hmm.
now. I think he has been low key one of the better color casters we've had available for an incredibly long time. And for him to be getting his shot now is amazing. Same thing with Lemon. Like Lemon has been putting in the work, putting in the time, putting in the effort, and that's what should be rewarded, right? People like Lemon and Hirix should be rewarded, and I know that Hirix is going to knock it out of the park, and Lemon and Leg are going to knock it out of the park when they get there. So are Trid and Ham, right? I'm really
Mm-hmm.
excited to see what Ham is going to be like without me, right? Because that's not something we have thought about,
Right.
right? And so I'm really excited to see. So that's one thing that I'm really, really excited about. Number two is I think even though there's less games in the format, the games are going to be better.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think overall that's a win because even even us as casters, even us as people who love tier 2 Overwatch know that those games last season, some of them were awful. Those teams stopped caring halfway. Some of the teams stopped caring halfway through,
Mm.
right? I don't think academy teams should be struggling like they should during the regular season, right? Like no one seemed to care, and that sucked. And I think coming up now, there's like this kind of like influx of new, right? In terms of there's new talent, there's been a lot of good separation, there's been a lot of really good rising talent that isn't kind of jaded by the initial stages of Overwatch and how much easier it was back then, right? Like kids here are coming up and being a little bit more realistic about their chances, and they're going to play for it this time. And hopefully, Atlanta Academy doesn't win everything, and they already haven't.
Yep.
Right,
Right.
Envy potentially can win everything, but we also get to hopefully see more European teams play, and the better of those teams. I want more games, but I think we have to kind of earn that back first because for everyone who puts support tier 2 in their profile, only 1 in 10 of them actually watch it. So
Yeah.
I think in order to get more games, you got to prove that we're going to watch them. Because even on the post of the talent announcement, I mean, it was like 200 something upvotes and like 30 comments. But, there are memes that, super, or, that someone puts up that get way more than that.
Right.
Right. And I think that's just, again, one of the challenges of how do we support tier 2, right? When all of this other stuff has been pushed into like this atmosphere of, memery and antics on the desk and, all this stuff. I'd love for that to kind of come down to Contenders, and Leg's already doing it. Trade already did it with his content. And the fact that they're all together, it's going to be so much easier for them to make content about Contenders while they're there than it ever will be, than it ever has been before. And that's also really, really exciting that they have access to each other. And so I think this Contender season is going to be good. Unfortunately, you got to be good if you're going to get seen. You got to work your way through open division. You got to earn it. It's a really unforgiving process this season, and that can be hard, but we shall see. I forgot what question you asked me. I went on too much of a tangent. So
I think we're just chatting about like moving on to other games and kind of going, which direction. And so it sounds like you kind of haven't like you're still figuring that out, and you're still like you're not like locking yourself into something. You're also not locking yourself out of something.
I, if I'm being like completely open, right? Something that I always talked about with my close friends and my husband was how much of a dream it would be to do Contenders with my BGG crew, and I was
Mm-hmm.
inches away from that. right? Like doing this with Lemon and Helix, like I play, we're doing a D&D campaign together, Lemon, Helix, and I. Like I love those people, and I think the FOMO is like the hardest part, and the reason why I kind of want to like stay, right? Because it's hard to see. And I'm sure it was kind of like the same thing on the other side, right? When Ham and I got up there, what it was like for people who were our peers at the time, right? But now that I'm on this side, it's like I was so close, right? And like I've known these people since my time, almost since the beginning of my time in Overwatch, and it was my dream to do this with them, and I don't get to do it. And I think just like an ex that you're still in love with, right? You hold out that like little bit of hope that's like, okay, if like the timing's right and we're both single and we're 30, then we can get married, right? And but do I want to do it because of Overwatch, or do I want to do it because I want to work with my friends?
Right.
That's what I really, really have to think about. And I think the biggest change for me is the fact that I never really thought that I used to be a generalist caster, then I like really went into Overwatch, and it's going to be really cool because I love being a generalist. People call me a jack of all trades, and it's a really exciting challenge to maybe see how many games I can cast at a good level, right? At a high tier level, because my brain works in mysterious ways. I could totally see myself doing that. But for now, I think I'm definitely going to be splitting some time. I've got some really awesome stuff in the TFT space. Couldn't have gone more opposite than that. But also my show on UGC, I'd love to cast with some people. And, this is one of those like diamond in the rough things. Now that Ham's casting with Trid, I'm not like locked in, and I could cast with whoever.
Right.
Right. And whether that be as an educational thing or a professional thing, that's really exciting. And then the other thing I really want to lean into is I've always been a mentor, I think, in this space, because I love doing it and I love helping people. I think there is no one that's ever really come across me that can say that I am sabotaging them or playing Game of Thrones, right? Like this I want this industry to do well. And I think in order for this industry to do well, we have to provide opportunities for mentorship. We have to provide ways for people to actually get better. We can depend on people, and this can work. And it works in a lot of other places, especially in this kind of field where it's a skill like casting, where someone's just going to work hard enough and just be that person, right? And then they just get there, right? But I'm concerned as to how many people might be just as good as Uber, but might just have needed a little bit of a heavier hand at the beginning, that might not have gotten that opportunity because of that. And that's what I want to eliminate. I want people to say, like, when they grow up, that like an esports career path is something that they could take, whether that be a producer or a caster or of course, those are the only two I can name off the top of my head, right? Observer, tournament organizer, event
Yep, there's a
coordinator, like
lot.
whether it be any of those things, right? How I can help you get there, that's what I want to do. So I think continuing to be an on-screen personality is one of the best ways to continuously be a person that can mentor, right? And have like the creds to do it. I also have to realize that I probably have 90% more work on camera for a big company than other people in my same career path, right? I think the only people who have more are the ones that like are the ones, right? If that makes sense. So I can feel confident going after jobs because I'm qualified, right? Not
Right.
because I got lucky. And I think that's kind of like the biggest thing was I got a little lucky, right? For Contenders, and I can't wait to go into this next one and walk into it and be like, I fucking earned this, right? I was the best candidate, and that's why they want me, right? And that's what I want to do next, is find whatever that is, whatever that may be, and hopefully it's soon, because I do not want a normal job.
Yeah.
True that. Well, yeah, this was
So,
this was kind of like we had some show notes, and we're just like I could kind of know going into this, like, we'll
let's
just kind of
freeform
loosey
it.
goosey it, yeah. Because I
Yeah.
think that's the most interesting, because it becomes more of a conversation and less of a, so what do you like about this thing? Well, I like this thing a lot. Cool. What about this thing? I'm not a huge fan of that thing.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Well, see ya. That was the show. Thank you. Good night. Like, that was it. It becomes a very different thing than like this, what this kind of became. So I'm glad this happened the way it did.
Yeah, like I hate complaining about this because my friends got their dream jobs,
Right.
right? But at the same time, it's like I feel I feel I feel a little used, right? I don't want that to take away from the fact that I'm appreciative of the opportunity. I just don't really want other people to feel that way, and to know that if I felt this way, right, there is a possibility that you are too. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying don't do it. I'm just saying protect this guy right here, protect this noggin, because the
Mm.
entertainment industry, they say, is cutthroat, right? And
Yeah.
you don't really know it until you're a victim of it. And you might not ever be a victim of it, but I you, I was, because they technically didn't do anything wrong, right? And so I would just that's kind of like the biggest piece of advice if you're going into it that I would say is just like, just be prepared, man. Do not go into this expecting any hand holding. You still have to make your own way. They might give you a little bit more support this time around, but this is just Overwatch. This is like most new and burgeoning fields, whether this be VR
Mhm.
or like AR or any type of emerging technology type of field, right? That happens there too. So this is all normal. It's just unfortunate that I am the person that has to experience it, right? I would have much rather you be in my position, but unfortunately, I'm here, and I just really want to reiterate that I'm happy, right? I'm bummed about the opportunity. I'm bummed that I don't get to do it with Ham, but in the end, I really, really think that talent lineup is the best talent lineup Contenders has ever had. There are
Mhm.
3 different casters, and I think that's going to be really good. Hurix and Lemon have been in part of tier 2 and Ham have been a part of, and Trid, right, have been a part of
Yeah.
tier 2 for such a long time that they're going to be able to highlight really good players this time from a bunch of different regions, right? So there isn't going to be that bias. And maybe I get to do Korea. I don't know. That'd be great.
Mhm. If
But
Craven happens, but that's
you
remains
know,
to be seen.
yeah, I'd love to get connected with my peeps in South America again, but I, I want to do more in that mentorship and in that space of, hey, this is how things are supposed to be, right?
Mm.
Or you're getting
Mhm.
screwed right now. This is how much you're supposed to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think there are some other people like that. And once we get that education out there, then I think esports can really grow from its feet, from the ground up, as opposed to being held by, some wallets at the top. And I think that's what's important to me moving forward, is to kind of evangelize what that's like. I'm lucky enough to do a panel on like for the Council of World Affairs on emerging technologies and esports and entertainment, which is like a huge opportunity. And I just want more of those to be available for people who aren't me, so they can also
Mm.
evangelize what this can be. And I'm excited for what esports is going to be, as opposed to tier 2 Overwatch. That's where a lot of like the stress comes in, right? They need to really show that they care about it, right? They could not have been more clear that it was a second thought to
Yeah.
us, right? And then it's hard not to let that kind of mindset become toxic and kind of ripple out everywhere, right? And me and Ham are like the last ones to do, and even we were getting there like lackadaisically, not watching the like games beforehand and just waiting for ZP and Avast to summarize it, right? Like
Mhm.
that happened once or twice, um, but they have to deal with that kind of efficacy issue. How do we get people to want to play in this? How do we get to people to actually feel that we support them, right, as a company? Because the casters can carry 80% of that weight, but there still is that 20% that needs to be carried, and that's on Blizzard to like really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I really think they need to get going on, is how do we make this less tier 2 and lean into like its own thing, right? We don't call college football tier 2 football. We
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
call, we don't call the European leagues tier 2 leagues, right? We might in terms of classifying them. Even within college football, there's, the football championship series and the football bowl series, right? Like it's not tier 2 football. It used to be, and then they changed it. So like that's kind of like what I want to like pull into perspective, right? Like there's a reason why that name bothers me.
Mhm.
It's catchy, but I think it kind of reinforces the kind of,
You're
oh,
second
we're
best.
bootstrapping here. We're little rapscallions doing it our own way, doing
Yeah.
free things from Blizzard, and you can do everything right and still fail because that last 20%. So we've got to get Blizzard to get that buy-in, and I think they're doing it. I think they're doing it. I'm thinking of my experiences with them, but this time around, they got a talent announcement out, right? I never got
Mm.
one of those. They got
It was an
like
actual Contenders announcement on the
yeah,
Overwatch League broadcast. Like, okay, we're doing.
right.
It would have been
Okay,
great to have the season 1 at the very start
so
of stuff, but maybe now we're starting to do real stuff.
I think
Like,
like a couple weeks ago, they finally changed the Contenders YouTube page. So my top 5 plays from Contender Season 0 wasn't the homepage video.
right.
Right? Like that is the type of stuff that just reinforces that tier 2 belief, right?
Mhm.
And there are people there who will keep it up, but when they ask a question, it takes 6 days to get an answer, right? And
Right.
like that's the type of stuff that really needs to change is ask a question, teams don't have to wait, but then you've waited 6 days. They've only got 1 day to change. Now everyone's in a tizzy because everyone's on a different page, right? Like just so much miscommunication, so much just like reactivity, so much last minute stuff, so much like, oh, I don't want to be here. Oh, I can't wait to go home. Right. And that just needs to stop. And I think because they're all together, they're going to be in Germany. It's going to feel very fraternal. I hope they like
Mhm.
carry cameras with them because the content outside of the house, like they could have an impromptu gaming house every weekend. Like
True.
the possibilities are endless, and they have an opportunity as casters to help build that bottom base of that pyramid through that, but they also need Blizzard to put that content somewhere. Instead of saying that they're going to do interviews, right? Give faces to these players because forever tier 2 casters have been more well known than tier 2 players outside of maybe Korea and some of those players, right? But everyone knows who ZP is, but not many people could name, just like how not many people can name a country on a map. I think it would be very
Mhm.
hard for Overwatch League fans to name Contenders players. And these
True.
players potentially can be making your team money later, and you need to know. So I hope they
Mhm.
like lean into the differences that it is as opposed to just making it a stepping stone. Right? It needs to be its own accomplishment and its own thing on the path to Overwatch League. It's not just okay, check box. Now I'm in Overwatch League. Oh, stuck in Contenders, didn't make it. Right? It needs to be
Mhm.
something more than that. I don't know what that is, but it needs to get there, or else it's just never going to. I do think less games is a good thing, though.
Yeah.
But we do actually have 2 legitimate questions. So,
Okay,
True,
one
from
legitimate
people.
question.
well, yeah,
Okay.
one legitimate question and then one ham question. So I'm gonna fire off the legitimate question. We got one from Sharkoff. It's actually like a 2 or 3 parter here. He wanted to know what drove you into getting into casting esports, and then also he's a little bit sad about your departure. You do have fans out there, Boop. Me and Kyle being 2 of them. We loved your
All
casting.
I need is the S at
Yeah.
the end, right? If
Yep.
I have fans,
Fans.
that's
Yeah.
all I need.
You have
Right?
definitively 2, so you're good. Don't worry.
Yeah. We can pluralize it. We're good, or we can make it a Z, right? Fans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fans.
because I'm woke.
You
Yep.
slowly became one of my favorite casters in esports. Also, you should try to set up owl watch parties in Colorado. So, about that first part, what got you into wanting to cast?
I was watching a caster on TV, said I could do that, and then kind of forgot about it for a time. I was at a Barcraft. It was my first exposure to esports ever. It was Taste Hostess casting, and it was like the coolest thing. But then, I was a music major at the time. Was I still? Maybe. And I was like working on that craft, and it was just like so cool. And I saw them doing it, and I was playing a lot of League at the time, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And I started like getting into casters, right? Like D-Man. I
Mhm.
remember the old school D-Man and Jat, right? And my favorite esports personalities were casters. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of like what I was most familiar with. And then I was at a Hearthstone tournament that I bombed out of, like literally in like 20 something minutes. I lost in the first round. It was really embarrassing, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise because someone didn't show up to cast that tournament. And it was like a
Huh.
local LAN here in Colorado. And my husband goes, he wants to cast because we had been talking about it, right? Because I
Oh, yeah,
did
yeah.
end up watching like a tier 2 type of tournament of StarCraft, and the casters were awful.
Mm.
Right. And I was like, like for the first time, I was like, I legitimately think I could do that. Right. And so we had been talking about it, and then that guy didn't show up. And then finally it was, he's a caster, he'll do it. And
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, and then I was like, okay, cool. I've never been one to back down from a performance.
Right.
And so I did it, and I ended up killing it. And then the guy at the land was like, dude, you sounded really, really good. Overwatch is coming out in a couple months. Do you cast that? And of course I was like, yeah. And
Of course it- absolutely, why would I not?
because this is for Moosh because I know he hates it. I'm always ABC, always be closing,
Yeah.
right? And I hate that too. Don't worry. And then I did it, and then I casted a couple other Hearthstone tournaments, and that's where I got my start. Was Hearthstone. And then Overwatch came out. They brought me on. I had a couple really good casts to start, and then I started working for Carbon Entertainment. And then that's when I started casting with Left Guy, and then Left Guy became host, and I became the content producer for Overwatch Contenders Season 0. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris Boopasaurusrex, and this is the Boop of the Week.
I
Yep,
remember
the
that
Boop of
was
the Week.
my first true exposure to it.
Yeah, and then so I was doing that for a couple seasons, and then I didn't get picked up. I tried to be the host for that first season of Jamerson and ZP,
Mm.
but I was not picked up for that. And then Ham and I met through Alex Gilfrost, and that's kind of like when I started casting Overwatch heavily. I had been doing it on and off for a while during that whole time, but I was focusing so much on my content. If you guys remember 100 Owl from like way back when we did the Shape of Carpe trailer, like that's kind of like what I was doing along with casting. And then I met Ham, and then casting kind of came to point A again. Because I had been a color caster with Gilfrost, which is something that a lot of people don't know. And then Ham was color, and literally the first time we casted, I was like, "What the hell just happened? I think I just fell in love again." Right? Like I was just like, I told her that day, I was like, it literally felt like I was meeting my husband again. Like, we need to do this. Like this, we need to keep going. And so we did. And it brought us all the way through BGG, South American Contenders, North American Contenders for 3 seasons, a bunch of other content. And now I'm here feeling like a grizzled old veteran, which is crazy. So that's how I got into it. I kind of challenged myself because, one, I love attention. Love it. I don't think any caster out there doesn't love attention, no matter how much they say they don't.
Yeah.
Number two is I had always been told my voice was something I could take advantage of, and I had been a licensed facilitator and an MC for weddings, and I did a lot of charity events and stuff like that. So it was something that I felt like I was good at, that I could actually do and enjoy and love, and I ended up being right. I love it. This world is challenging and can make me more upset than anything out there, but it's still something I love. I can say the same thing about my parents. So yeah, so that's what got me into it, and what's keeping me going is I love it. I love the people
Nice.
here.
Cool.
Not all of them are nice, but the ones that don't deserve it usually get their comeuppance at some point.
Mm.
And
True
I'm
that.
patient, right? Just like that
Yeah.
person said that my voice could never be used for broadcast because it sounded too gay. I was your coworker for 3 seasons, so screw you. And it's people like that that also drive me.
Yeah,
All the,
yeah.
you know,
Gotta
like all the
silence the
people.
haters.
Yeah, I love silence and haters, man. And that's just like one thing. If you ever work for me or with me, the best way to get me to do something is to tell me I can't do it. It's like,
Yep.
it is going to be how you get me to do work because I am lazy as shit any other way. So just be like, I don't know, Chris, I think I might get this person to do it. You will have it done the next day. It'll be wrong, but it'll be done. And so
As long as it's done, that's all that matters. That's all that counts.
yeah, I think inadvertently that person unleashed that on me, but still throughout this process, like me getting dropped is kind of the same thing, right? They're going to see that I was someone that they could have developed and become something, and I can't wait to really prove that.
Definitely.
Cool.
So now we've got the Ham question. This came through on Twitter. Ham wrote, if you woke up one morning and found you had magically become Charlie and he had become you, how would you get him to give you ranch?
Okay, so let me explain where this comes from. So Ham and I live in the same state. We play D&D together, and my dog Charlie, he's a big Great Pyrenees, super fluffy. He looks like an idiot and is an idiot. Not the great brightest dog, but just cute as a button. Just like his dad, absolutely loves ranch. Like I love ranch dressing. It is coursing through my veins. It's actually really funny because I haven't had ranch last week and I've lost weight. It's like my soda. Like, when people cut soda out of their diet, like I
Yeah.
eat like a family-sized thing of ranch like every month myself. It's gross.
That sounds
Um,
fair.
and so we were playing D&D one time, and Charlie comes in, and his face is covered in ranch. And it's like this like father like son. Like I have not felt that kind of proud. I don't
Right.
think ever in my life. But the hard part here is that Charlie is not very bright, so I don't know how I could get him to give me ranch if I was Charlie. It would have to be like an accident. I would have to kind of like play the long game and like have him drop it somewhere, because he's also like super delicate about everything and like really aware of his surroundings. So if I'm just like hyper aggressive about grabbing the ranch, I'm sure I could get it. So I don't need him to give it to me. I'll just take it.
Okay.
I will take your ranch.
Yeah. Yeah, but like father, like son. That dog was covered in ranch and it was hilarious.
No, I live that. I love ranch, and my cat that I've had since before my son was born. My cat is like 18 years old. If I'm eating ranch, he's eating ranch. He's licking it off the plate, chewing on French fries that have it on there. So I understand the love of father son animal son ranch love. I get it completely.
Hell yeah. Ranch love for life. That's the name of my mixtape.
You got to find a sweet cover photo for
Right.
that. But
Yeah, I know.
I do think that that's about a show. We had a good one. I told you it was just going to be chill. Kick
Yeah,
back,
you know,
chat.
I answered all your questions 6 separate times in 6 separate places. So, hopefully
Basically
there's a
covered everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a
we covered
podcast in
everything.
there somewhere, but if you're one of those people who pops to the end and then the beginning, I am not on track through any of this. So apologies.
This was the
but-
Quentin Tarantino episode. That's what
Right.
I
this
need
was.
it like memento. I'm gonna need to like you guys are gonna need like tattoo notes on yourself to remember what I'm talking about. But no, it was good. I needed to vent, and I needed to kind of like just get it out there. Is just kind of the things that you think are happening are kind of happening, but I don't think they're happening because of why you think they're happening. Is the big lesson.
Mhm.
And I hope to be back. I love Overwatch. I love the community. You can still find me on UGC every Thursday on Overwatch Lately as we dive deep into Overwatch personalities ourselves. But on my show, we talk about really stupid things. Avril and I talked about aliens for like 20 minutes. It was awesome. But you know, it's like more of like a casual, like less about
Right.
Overwatch, more about you type thing. That's been really fun. This allows me to do some content. I've been doing some work for TFT, which is really cool. There should be a really fun thing coming up for you TFT fans upcoming. That's not just set 3. I'm gonna start streaming because when it's like one of those things where when a bunch of people tell you you should do something, you should maybe do it.
Mm-hmm.
3 years later, I think I'm finally gonna do it. And start streaming. So I've got ideas. I just got to kind of like take a step back and really evaluate where I am, what I want to do, and then go after it. Because right now I think it's still fresh and I'm still kind of moving every which way, but I just want to be involved.
Yep.
Right? I'm
Mhm.
okay with a participation award right now.
Sometimes it's all it takes.
Yep.
But where can they find you and all of your content over on social media so they can follow you?
You can find me at twitter.com, twitter.tv. Man, I am tired, man. I've got a whole other podcast
And
after
I'll
this.
say you're about to record another show.
I know. Let me move this back again. You can find me on christiansingles.com/Boopasaurusrex. Also, you can find me on twitter.com/Boopasaurusrex, and soon to be twitch.tv/Boopasaurus1. Because I'm Boopasaurus and I forgot my security questions and they want the username back. So it's my fault. But yeah, hopefully it's Boopasaurus here soon. But Twitter is definitely the best way to keep in touch with me. I'm going to be doing some educational content on casting. One of my dreams has always been to kind of like make a textbook about casting and get people from the industry to contribute chapters. So that's one of my pipe dreams moving forward. So that's where you can find my stuff.
Nice.
Cool. Kyle, where can they find you on the internet?
Basically, just Twitter at Kyle the Winner. That's the only place I am anymore. Don't add me on Facebook because it'll be a bit rough there. Sorry about that.
That's a little creepy. Just random
Add me on
ads
MySpace.
on Facebook.
Add me on LinkedIn, dude. Let's get some LinkedIn going.
Yeah.
Let's turn LinkedIn back into a thing here.
But you can find me over on Twitter at ThornRain. I do all my streaming right here on the Blackwatch Report Twitch channel when I do my streaming. If you're an audio listener, swing by that Twitch, hit that follow button, make one of those free accounts. If you've got Amazon Prime, that means you've got Twitch Prime, and we are affiliates. You can hit that sub button, help out the show financially. If you want to help out completely free, send us a review. 1 star, 5 star. We read them all. Well, actually, Kyle reads them all because he's way better at that. We do appreciate the any of the feedback that we get from those reviews. But you can find the show on Twitter at Blackwatch Report. There's no O in that report. And you can email the show, blackwatchreport@gmail.com, and follow the show right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/blackwatchreport. We record live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, and our intro music is an original piece by our own Mr. Kyle Wynn. This has been a High Noon production. You can find all of our shows over at highnoonpodcast.com, and come and chat with all of the hosts over on the Discord at discord.me/highnoonpodcast. And with that, Blackwatch out.